Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All Things Middle-earth here with a video looking at the Commander Sharku. And before I get into today's video, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who helped me with this project as well as some other projects on the channel. Specifically, Gotti Dot helped me put together a graphic that I'm going to be using from here on out to quickly showcase these different Commander reviews we do. And I couldn't be happy. It looks really, really clean and amazing to me. So huge shout out to him for putting that together, and then to Drewsfer as well. I've just been talking on Discord, and he's in our server here on server 67 playing with Gondor, and we've been able to do a lot of testing on Sharku, a commander who probably did not deserve as much testing as we gave him, but still, nonetheless, a lot of people have gone and put a lot of work in to help me create better and more accurate content. So I thank you all for that, and now let's go ahead and get into the video. Okay, starting out for Sharku, we're going to look at his perks really quick. He's got the Strategist perk, which is going to unlock at level 20. That's going to give him an extra 25 focus, 2 skill points, and focus, poison, and burn damage are going to be increased by 10%. Again, that unlocks at level 20. Then his stats starting out, his might is going to be 96 starting out with a per level value of 0.82. His focus is his next highest with a 162 starting value at 1.58 per level. And then his highest value is going to be speed, with 172 speed and 1.76 per level. Okay, now to give you a quick overview of all his skills before we jump into the actual build. He's going to have Warband Leader as his bottom R1 tree, which is going to give him March speed increased up to 15%, and he's going to act as 2 commanders when completing tips. And with that, he's going to get extra siege, up to 7 extra siege, and resources gathered. Now, these skills are not completely useless. There are situations where having these commanders, especially for me having respected him up, and I believe I imparted wisdom to him as well, which I would not advise doing. But now when a new season starts, if I want to use him to get a little bit extra resources, or maybe early on he could help with siege, there are some situations, but for the most part, commanders that have Warband Leader, to me, eventually after you're playing, you're in season 2 and 3, you have enough commanders like where tips aren't really an issue. Commanders that have this, to me, it's kind of just a wasted skill, because it doesn't synergize with anything else that we're going to talk about. The next, his top R1 is going to be Arsonist, which are going to have his normal attacks inflict burn damage. And then the max level effect is that the normal attacks are going to inflict burn damage twice, dealing less damage with each successive hit. Followed by Arson, which is against 2 enemy targets. It's going to deal 18.5 burn damage twice, and each attack chooses a separate target for that one. Then we've got Fuel Oil, which is against all enemies. Burn damage is going to be increased by up to 20% for what they receive for everyone. Then the R3 is Conspirator, where we have the commander is going to have poison and burn damage increased by up to 35%, and his physical damage is going to be reduced. And then the max level effect is that physical damage cannot be decreased for any further. And then Treason up here for the first 4 rounds against 2 enemy targets. There's going to be a 100% chance of succumbing to madness each round, followed by Trickery, which is against 1 enemy unit. It's going to deal 60% physical damage once, and there's a 50% chance to inflict madness for 1 round. And then lastly, his R5 is going to be the Wargs are going to deal an extra 30% damage, and he's going to get madness immunity to orcs, followed by Warg Healing. So in round 5, allied units with Wargs are going to recover HP, modified by the focus stat, and then Beast Taming units with Wargs are going to get extra defense. So looking at his kit, there are kind of 2 builds you can go, and that's either going to be a burn damage build or a Warg build specifically, so boosting Wargs or boosting the amount of burn damage that Sharku does. And in a minute, I'll explain why you're going to go with one over the other for sure. So the first build and the suggested build for Sharku is going to be the Warg buffing build. So you're going to prioritize the R5 and the R3 trees. Down here, as you can see, we get the 30% damage. We get the madness immunity for those orcs. You get an extra 40% damage. And then you get some healing in round 5 up to 160% modified by the focus stat. And then Conspirator is going to increase that burn and poison damage by 35%. We're not really worried about that. But we do, the Treason here is pretty nice for the madness, the chance of madness in the first 4 rounds. And there's a little bit of chance here with the physical damage. And then this is just the extra points I had in Arsonist. But again, the R3 and the R1 are going to be suggested builds there. Running the Raiders or the Trackers, if you have them, the tier 2 or the tier 3 for the warg unit. Next, for the equipment we're going to run on him for this build. Again, this equipment is more focused on the wargs and the fact that they're orcs. I did the best case that I had, which was pretty good for mine, but actually I'll go ahead and put the ideal case on the screen. This is the new spreadsheet of Commander kind of snapshots that Gotti Dot put together for me. So again, huge shout out. But as you can see here, the suggested items for him are going to be the Spear of Udin, the Golden Skin, the War Helm, and the Palantir of Orthanc. And the effects on those are going to be on the Spear, you're going to want either Might of Cavalry or Might of Orcs. For the Golden Skin, you're going to want Fortitude of Cavalry. For the War Helm, you're going to want Fortitude of Orcs or Warcry. And then for the Palantir of Orthanc, you're going to want Might of Soldiers. And as you can see, the build is highlighted down below each of those there. And then there's a troop suggestion above that. So again, from here on out, I'm going to be using that as a kind of quick reference format. So that's going to be linked down below. There'll be a link to the picture. And those are also going to be in the Discord as well with each of these reviews we do. So if you are wanting a quick reference for this commander, that is kind of a snapshot of what like his absolute best case situational gear could be for this build we're talking about. Now on to the reports, and it's going to start, and this is the best case scenario. I'm just going to be really direct with you guys. Sharku is probably not someone that you're going to want to invest in at all. I figured if his warg build ends up being good, his best case scenario is probably going to be against mounted units or mounted commanders, because again, the raiders are going to have this predator perk, so they deal an extra 20% damage to mounted units, and then they get an extra 30 from Sharku, and then they have more from the different gear. Again, the gear I had here was no joke. I mean, there's no reason you should have a fully strengthened gold item on Sharku, but again, we got the defense was up crazy high, especially with his ability, this one right here, the beast taming. The defense was through the roof, and it just didn't really make a huge difference. So as you can see here, this is against an Eowyn. It is a very well-built Eowyn. They do have rewriters and the tier 4, the Swan Knight. So if you were to run this build with raiders up against a different Eowyn, there's probably a chance you'll do a little bit better. But I wanted to show the actual like best case, battle you could go up against in terms of an Eowyn who's a very good mounted commander. That way, I don't want to show a bad example and then it just not be accurate. So anyway, this is the first example with Eowyn. Again, here's the build. And again, actually in this situation, Durnhelm, through some testing, we kind of realized was probably also not going to be the best situation for her. So even in that, without running Shield Maiden, this is the result here. The other thing kind of nice about this build is it does have a madness effect. In the first 4 rounds, it's 100% guaranteed to like apply the effect. But how madness works is there's a chance to like apply madness, and then there's a 50% chance that the commander will either be affected or not affected by it. And then based on how many troop types there are, so in combined armies, so in this situation there are 4 different troop types, it basically is going to roll a 4-sided die and pick 1, 2, 3, or 4 and hit, for the madness. So even if you affect the rewriter, for example, with madness, it could still attack your troops. But the nice thing is when you're running only 1 troop type, it lessens the amount of chances you have to be hit by that. So the madness is nice. It's a pretty complimentary thing. But again, as you can see, not crazy results here. But this is definitely the best case situation for him. But I will show you some examples of the fire damage build and why I think it has potential, but is falling short. So this is the fire damage build. I just put kind of some tanky troops. I put some trolls and some berserkers with him. Trolls, however, are not going to be the best option when possibly afflicting madness because they tank and kind of mess things up for that. So this was not the most amazing troop count, but I wanted to put some tanky units with him to see how much commander damage he can put out. So as you can see here, we have all the burn damage stuff. We should be getting 35 from this, 200 from normal attacks. Everything's inflicting multiple times. Enemies should be receiving an extra 20. And this is what things ended up looking like here. So as you can see, the commander damage didn't even get above 60,000. The soldiers still did more work here. But there was just no way they were going to get out and take care of this Eowyn. Again, doing about a third, but this is like 100% a loss here for him. And the reason being that his burn damage build is so bad, I did a lot of math calculations and confirming in the Discord. So shout out to the people that have helped me kind of reason through the math and the analytics behind this. But as far as I understand for commanders, so if we're looking at Sharku, burn damage, and I think it's the same for poison and focus skill damage, is going to be modified by the focus that you have. If I remember right, it was like 12.65 5 was the multiplier. So in theory, Sharku should be doing, 199 right here times 12.65 or whatever it is. I'm going to be putting some stuff on this screen. It gets confusing. But long story short, Sharku should be doing a lot more burn damage than he is. He's doing about close to half burn damage because with the increase from fuel oil here, as well as Conspirator, you've just got a lot of stacking burn damage, and his focus is his second highest skill. So if you boost that, in theory, there's a lot going on here that he should be doing better. But if you go through and do the math, he's hitting about half or even less than half sometimes for what he should be. And you can test this on other commanders to kind of confirm and they are working correctly. So whether or not it's bugged or there's something that we're missing, the moral of the story is that his burn damage is just not hitting very good. Again, it gets pretty involved with Sharku, so I don't really expect a lot of people to dig into this much, but even something as simple as his Conspirator ability, it says it's going to increase burn and poison damage by 35%, like 100%, and it only does 30. So either there's an error or it's just like a mistype and it's supposed to be 30, but that's one thing there. And then if you go through the reports, you can see that the actual amount of burn damage he's doing is significantly less than it should be based on the calculations we're doing. But again, it's kind of a lot to go through. So I don't claim to be an expert. So again, take all this with a grain of salt. But as you know, again, his arson ability here, which does, deal damage twice, should be dealing quite a bit more than it is here. It does cause, one hit here and then the next one is a little bit less, like it says. But again, adding all the calculations in, it just seems like he's not hitting quite the way that he should. Now, the moral of the story for Sharku fans is maybe it is bugged, and there's a chance that he could get better, or if they rework characters down the line or whatever happens, there's a chance this isn't hitting correctly. But I do not claim to be an expert on like the back end formulas for how things calculate. I did my best to kind of make it as simple as possible and was getting some help kind of understanding it. And so, again, we could be a little off on this, so just take that with a grain of salt. But moral of the story, again, his warg build compared to his burn damage build, there's a huge, huge difference here against the exact same army comp. But maybe his burn build could get better, but I would not hold your breath for that on that one. This is another burn damage build. I realized with this build as well that all of his gear I had on him was boosting orcs, and so I didn't have orcs with him, as well as the trolls messed up the taunt a few times, or they messed up the madness because they were taunting a few times. So I took in an army of all orcs to see if there was a better case scenario where they were getting some more buffs from the gear. And as you can see, again, ugly, very, very ugly here for him. So the build for him is going to be the warg build with the best wargs you have. But again, he would be a commander I would probably advise from investing in. Just because you're not going to see a lot of return out of him. And I do think going up against, if his best build is with wargs, I do think going up against mounted commanders is more than likely going to be his best case scenario. There might be a few instances where, again, if you come up against just a really bad build or weak troops or there's a level difference, yeah, he'll do okay. But compared to just solid built commanders, this isn't even against a Theoden. We had a Theoden we were testing with for other commanders, and I didn't even want to do it because he's not even doing anything with AON. So again, this is still going to be kind of the best case scenario. So really long story short, I would probably advise against running Sharku. He is probably the worst commander that I have reviewed thus far, and especially the ones that I have actually been able to get my hands on. I really begrudgingly gave him gifts to get him up to Respect 5 to test it, and the return was pretty bad. So again, I'll put the graphic on the screen so you can see. For quick reference, this will be linked down below as well. I'm a huge proponent of just playing the game how you enjoy. So if Sharku is one of your favorite commanders, then I would definitely, if it's someone you enjoy playing with, then go ahead and use Sharku. You're not going to get any flack from me for that. But if you're playing this game and you want to know where he ranks, he's, I think, one of the worst tier 1, if not overall one of the worst commanders in the game. Again, there might be an issue with his kit, so maybe we'll see him get a little bit better. But again, for the most part, as a commander, when you're going up against other commanders, it's not going to be great. Now, there could be some other situations where you're using him as a tile taker or a pather, where he's running wargs, he's a little bit quicker, and if you happen to run into another type of scouting army with the wargs, he might outperform just some other really basic armies that are being used to scout. But again, I wouldn't really go that far as to try and make that work. But the picture as well as the spreadsheet are going to be linked down below with just all the information you can ever want on this commander. But again, that is kind of in short summary how you use Sharku and what I think his best case is, which is probably just to not really use him. But again, if you like him, feel free to give him a try. But I appreciate you watching the video. If you enjoyed this video or other really analytical deep dive videos, I'm working my way through all the tier 1 commanders and want to cover all the commanders at some point. So if you enjoy videos like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to join our fellowship here on YouTube if you want to see more videos like this one. But that's going to do it for me, and I'll see you all in a future video.